Well, welcome to the Igniting Hope Beliefs Gym, where we work out our beliefs every week in the podcast. Steve Backlund here. By the way, I've got such a special show on today. I've got guests, Pieter and Melinda Lagaay. Why don't you just say hello to everybody?
Hello, everyone. So excited to be here.
This is going to be an amazing call.
It really is. And I'm just thinking about working out beliefs. And because nobody wants flabby beliefs. I mean,
No.
flabby beliefs are just a bummer. Our load-bearing capacity is limited. And I think that one of the greatest places to work out our beliefs is in the home and in key relationships. We know not everybody listening is married, but the principles, we're going to be talking about marriage today, and the principles that we're going to talk about just overlap into just every relationship, into leadership. And so what we're going to talk about today is very good. And Pieter, Melinda, especially Melinda, you wrote this, Believing the Best in Your Spouse. It's going to be a blog that we're going to be releasing next Monday for those of you who listen to these right when we release the podcast. So just again, welcome. And by the way, I ask you about your marriage and share a little bit about that and then get into the teaching, I just want to say this, that Melinda, she works for Igniting Hope. How many years have you worked for the
Well, including my internship for third year, I have been with you for 4 years. It's been an incredible 4 years.
And you're, what is it, operations director, manager? I got to get the wording
Yes,
right.
Director of Operations. Yes.
And you've been such a blessing to me, and just in helping with our courses, the development of Backlund Leadership Academy. You have the unusual ability to take my dreams and put them into practice and in practicality. And Pieter, you've been such a blessing as well. You also served as an intern, third year student with me, with Melinda, and you're a big part of what we're doing as well. So thank you. Well, all right, let's get into this. Hey, why don't you just share, for those who don't know, just give a testimony of how the Lord just restored your marriage.
Yes. So, well, first of all, we did not grow up in the church. We didn't have a Christian background. And so after we got married, it was a second marriage, and I gave my life to the Lord. And Pieter and I just, a couple years into our marriage, I just started praying again. And about 4 or 5 years into our marriage, it came out that Pieter had been having affairs. There was infidelity and pornography addiction. And all of this came out. And on the night everything came out, Pieter had an encounter, and we didn't even know the word encounter at that time. And Pieter, I'll let you share that part of the story, but I'll just say briefly that night completely changed our lives. I had an encounter as well. I heard God's voice. I've never heard it that way before. Tell me that he was going to restore my marriage. So that was the beginning of a very long journey of restoration.
How'd you hear that? Just in your spirit, or was it an audible voice, or how did you hear
It's hard to explain. It was audible, but it was so loud. I thought Pieter heard it. And at the same time, Pieter simultaneously, it was in the middle of the night, Pieter was having an encounter, and we spoke after that and found out that God had been talking to both of us. And so that night was a turning point. And, it was supernatural, because I believe that even just the grace to be willing after everything came out it was just a gift of mercy. I think that night I looked at Pieter and I thought, it was kind of like, it must have been how when Jesus looked at the Apostle Paul, when he was Saul and he was having Christians murdered, and thrown into prison, but Jesus didn't look at him for what he was currently doing. He actually looked at him and said, this is the guy, he's going to lead my church. And I think that night it was like this gift to see Pieter for who he really was, because I knew what he was doing was terrible. And we don't make light of our situation. We know it's a heavy story. And, what we're not saying is, people who are in these situations, we understand sometimes marriages don't work out. And that, obviously we always say this too, if the abuse had continued, if things had continued to happen the way they were happening, we wouldn't be married today. But that night, I mean, Peter, it just changed him. He completely stopped doing what he was doing, and we haven't been the same since. And so it was a very
How many
Damascus
years
Road
ago
type
was this?
encounter. Oh, this was almost 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And we didn't say this in the beginning, but you have been instrumental in help actually leading our Igniting Marriages part of Igniting Hope Ministries. And I can just testify watching your marriage and watching the influence of your marriage that it is a miracle.
Yeah.
And it's such a testimony, and you guys bring so much hope to people. Peter, anything you want to add to what Melinda shared?
Yeah, I think like Paul, I always wondered, do you think somebody was praying for Paul specifically? I mean, somebody was really praying, like, wow, I really hope that, I just pray that he encounters the Lord. And the reason I bring that up is because we talk about that night that happened 10 years ago as almost like a Damascus Road encounter of what I had, like, just it was a vision. But preceding that, it was probably a couple of years before that. Melinda wrote in her journal one day, Lord, whatever it takes, bring Peter to you. And so that night was a fulfillment of an answered prayer. And I believe that right now that there's people listening to
Mhm.
this who, because I've heard that too. It's like, Lord, what about my prayers? What about, like, I hear this testimony it encourages me and it gives me hope, but what about my prayers? And I really believe that right now, that people have prayed those prayers before for their spouses. And that just by hearing this call, whether you're hearing it live or whether you hear it on a rerun or even whether you hear it by mouth, word of mouth from somebody else, that our testimony and the power of that prayer wasn't just a one-hit wonder. And so I think about that Paul story, on the Damascus Road. I'm like, man, that was just that was basically what happened to us.
Wow. And and look what the Lord has done. And what it's amazing that our greatest challenge, our greatest low point, our greatest apparent failure, that it God is so masterful at turning things around. And then as we find him to help us overcome the issues in our own lives, the issues in our relationship, then that becomes one of the strongest parts of our lives and ministry, and it turns into influence. And I just see that on you, and I just, even as we know the testimony of Jesus is a spirit of prophecy, and there's even marriages that are struggling right now that are going to turn around so significantly that your marriages are going to become healing marriages for
Yes.
many others.
Yes, I love how you always say it backfired again. What the devil meant for evil, that God really turned around and used it for good. And now we get to restore marriages.
Yeah.
We get the honor of just helping walk people through that process. And it is such a privilege to be able to do that.
Again, it's like Paul. I mean, God using someone like Paul is offensive. I mean, it is a little bit offensive that, someone like
Oh
Paul,
yeah.
that would be used in that capacity. And I think to some degree, like, that's sometimes like a story. It's a little bit offensive that we're the ones who are,
Yeah.
doing a marriage healing ministry, right? I
And we
mean,
had to overcome a lot of
yeah,
beliefs
yeah.
about
I think just like Paul did.
ourselves and each other
Yeah, I
too.
think a lot of what Paul wrote was he was, in a way, kind of writing to himself a little bit and just encouraging himself in the Lord.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Well, we want to go into a specific part of marriage, and it's believing the best in your spouse. And I talk about, we have beliefs about God, we have beliefs about ourselves, beliefs about other people, and we're focusing in on beliefs about other people, specifically marriage. But this again relates to every area. I remember as a pastor, and I've shared with you that the Lord told me in my first pastorate that I was my people's biggest problem. Because I said, because he said they have enough challenges, let alone having a leader who doesn't believe in them.
Yeah.
And that really shifted some things. And I know in the culture of empowerment, I talk about believing in Wendy and shifting from trying to motivate her through guilt and
Mhm.
manipulation to really believing in them. So, Melinda, why don't you, because you're, this has been a very key thing for you, and I know you walk in it too, Peter, but take it away, Melinda. Talk to us about believing
Yes.
your spouse.
Well, obviously we had a lot to work through. And so we went through this process of forgiving each other and forgiving ourselves and this whole thing. But I think the temptation when you've gone through something really hard and you've been hurt and wounded is to weaponize it. But actually, I always like to say forgiveness is a weapon in the kingdom of God. And actually, forgiveness means leaving it at the cross with Jesus. And so, true forgiveness means you don't weaponize the pain. It doesn't mean you don't talk about what happened. It doesn't mean you don't have boundaries and you don't need to work through those issues of how to restore trust and rebuild things. But I remember one day the Lord said to me, I got upset at Peter. I can't even remember why I was upset at him, but I was so tempted to just remind him of what he did and to kind of believe the worst in him. And I started, having this conversation with myself in my head. And I remember the Lord just stopped me and he said, Melinda, every time you do that, you're bringing the garbage back into your marriage. And I need, let's talk about what you're believing right now. What you're believing about Peter. And I was like, oh, and it was a kind father. It wasn't a rebuke. It was just like this father going, and I go, you're right. And so I repented and I was like, gosh, Peter's amazing. And I started meditating on all the things I love about him, all the ways God has restored us, like just the encounter he had. And it just shifted the complete atmosphere of my home, of myself. And it's been a journey to do this, but I think when we realize that there's so much peace in forgiveness, and forgiveness really is identifying the lies the enemies cause us to believe and getting the truth, and even just renouncing those vows, inner agreements we've made in our hearts, and just leaving that all at the cross. And so when we do that, we get this incredible opportunity to ask the Lord, like, how do you see my spouse?
Mm.
And I had to do that. I had to look at Peter and go, gosh, because he would get prophetic words at church like, Peter, you're a man of purity. You're a man of, you're a noble man. And I realized like, oh, Peter doesn't even believe that about himself. And so if I come into agreement with that, then, the fact that he's not, and I believe the opposite, then I'm helping the enemy with his job, which is to really destroy Peter. And so I think when you've gone through something really hard, it's especially important just to ask the Lord, like, hey, Lord, how do you see my spouse? What are you saying about them? And with people, relationships in general, we always have to see people higher than how we're experiencing them currently. Even our children. I mean, there's how many times as parents do we have to remind ourselves, oh yes, they're amazing and this is what God's saying about them. But especially in marriage, I think it's been a key area for me in just overcoming and really not
How
just
would you,
overcoming, but being happy, having
I
joy.
guess, again, tell us how you practically did this. So you'd hear prophetic words, you'd about Peter, you ask the Lord who Peter is. Was that in your just your prayer time, or just you just kind of rehearsed that through the day? You declared it. What did you do?
I do definitely declarations. I mean, declarations have been a huge part of our journey. I just read something this morning. We know Victorious Emotions goes over the beliefs and what it does in our brains, but I think I've realized like we believe what we're repeatedly telling ourselves. So declarations have been huge in that, just telling myself the truth over and over again. And then practically, Peter and I do something called affirmations, and affirmations have been really, we don't do it every day now just because, but when we were first recovering, we would sit together and we would literally have time just to speak life into each other and just tell each other what we love about each other. And we would do that pretty regularly. And it strengthened, I needed to hear it. I needed to hear what Peter had to say about me. He needed to hear that as well. But so practically, it meant really being intentional. The intentionality in marriage is so key. We just sometimes, I think, at least for me, you just assume your spouse knows what you're thinking, and they don't always know. And so when we're really intentional with that, even if it's just a text message, hey, I love you. This is what I love about you. It just
Well, you're
goes so
I
far
mean,
in a marriage.
you're taking a position of power,
Mhm.
and you're obliterating the victim mindset. And Peter, what did that feel like to you as you're coming out of a lifestyle you've disappointed, obviously Melinda, there's shame, there's regret that you're battling. Yeah, what was going on in you?
Yeah, I think I'd almost say this like this applies to like anybody, like whether you're a believer or not, but people can encourage you. And I would say as a believer, that is like a word. So I was getting words, I was getting rhema words. God was speaking. But when the person who like you share that covenant with, or someone really close to you, then actually starts to affirm that word, it's like watering a seed.
Mhm.
So now all of a sudden that can actually grow. That seed can actually grow into you and can actually just starts to become a part of your identity. And so sometimes that seed it just lands on terrible soil, right? There's thorns and stuff or whatever. And it just isn't the right environment to like really germinate and become it, you don't become a part of it. It doesn't become a part of you. And and then, so these moments where, Melinda is saying these things, and all of a sudden, it's, I'm starting to truly just sense her spirit that she believes it, that she believes the words that have been spoken over me because she's affirming them. Now, all of a sudden, that's really, I believe, where the transformation in our identities occur. And I've seen that in people, I've seen that in fellow believers. How many times do we get a word? And I mean, Steve, I love your example of when the pastors prayed over you and they said, "I've created you. I haven't created you to fail. I've created you to succeed." I mean, you got a confirmation. You were affirmed in a way that just gave you such a feeling of God's hand over your life, and that just says it's going to be okay in our spirit. That says it's going to be okay, and that's we worked on that. So practically speaking, for me, that's what happened.
Yeah, and I just believe people even watching are just
Yeah.
even getting set free from all the things Peter was set free from, the shame, and even women watching or men who have been in my situation, just breakthrough is coming for you. I always say like Jesus is the breakthrough, like he's coming for you. And even just the fact that you're listening to this is even confirmation. So yeah, just shame is getting broken off. Things are falling away that have been there for a long time.
Yeah, and it's funny because when we share a story nowadays, I mean, we smile and we laugh, and it's kind of wild to think about like everything that happened, and like I said before, it's like sometimes I'm like, God, it is a little comical that you're using someone like us to do this, and we're not trying to make light of what happened because when we were in it, it was really serious, but that is His goodness, that is His grace, and that is His kindness and His love is to just stuff just gets washed away where now we kind of laugh about it where we're just like, oh my gosh, the optics of this are just incredibly funny, Lord, like that you would do this, but we're
We
so
just believe
excited. Yeah,
anything is possible.
anything is possible. It's so true.
Yeah.
I I share, as you well know, I talk a lot about Gideon and this hope angel. Gideon came to Gideon and told him who he was, and he didn't. He's a mighty warrior. The Lord is with you, mighty warrior. The angel said, and Gideon was a mighty warrior with non-mighty warrior feelings and non-mighty warrior experiences, but it unlocked him. And
Mhm.
really, what you're talking about is prophecy,
Mhm.
partnering with what God is saying, speaking it out. Life is in the power of the tongue, and yeah, it's tricky because you still got to manage things in life. We're seeking to upgrade our beliefs about our spouse or our children or other people in our life, but we still have to manage things. You have to manage, just still ordinary frustrations in marriage, or you got to manage the thing coming back up
Yeah.
in your life. What do you, as you share these things with other people, and I know you do a lot in marriages, and we know that not everybody watching or listening is struggling in marriage. This message is going to help us all go higher, but
Mhm.
specifically those who've been maybe betrayed or those who have gone through something similar. What's the biggest obstacles that you face in trying to help people do what you're sharing today?
Yeah. Who do you want to start? Or you want me to?
um well, I think from the side of the person who's done the betraying, um I would say there's certainly like overcoming guilt and shame. I think um, probably overcoming the idea that your identity is rooted in the
Mhm.
causation of what happened, right? So if you cheated, it's the expressions that we hear: once a cheater, always a cheater.
Yeah.
And that thing, that voice, right? And just like you say, changing the channel, and just being super intentional about not listening to things like that. And again, like when we talk about believing in your spouse, in a way, we also have to believe in like who we are, who God created us to be. But and you said before, like, what does that look like? And it looks like, like when I'm driving to work in the car and nobody can hear me, and I'm in the safety of all the windows, and I get to yell it out. I get
Mm.
to war with that declaration.
Yeah.
And I, there's one thing, I sometimes is blasting worship music, and I made a joke to someone once. I said, sometimes when I hear that thing, I just turn the music up louder, or I yell louder. I
Yeah.
yell, so I'm like, I will not be overpowered by this voice.
Well, I love, Steve, how you say, it's hard to believe a lie when you're declaring the truth.
Yeah.
And that's so true. And I think for the one who has, been, because there is, we talk about Paul and that's so great, but Paul could have had a family. There were people likely really impacted by what he did, or families that were ripped apart because of Paul's life. He negatively affected people in a really dramatic way. And so I think that, again, I think it just comes down to choosing to forgive, and it doesn't mean we just trust people at the same level. Again, if someone's hurt us, it doesn't mean we continue to let them back into our lives. But in our case, because it was a restoration, it was just that constant choice to just not allow it's the lies, it's like those lies to come back in. And when they do come back in, just to have a game plan. You kind of have your declarations, you're ready. I go spend time with the Lord. I love journaling. And so you kind of figure out something that works for you. But I will say this, it's a journey. We're 10 years on the other side of this, and mind renewal takes time. Steve, as you know, we're igniting hope, but it does work. And I will say this, like, and that's why I think we're so passionate about it at Igniting Hope, because my life is completely transformed. And even in the 4 years I've been at Igniting Hope, there's been a complete transformation in myself. And I know it's directly related to going after those lies and replacing them with the truth and being really intentional with that. And it doesn't happen right away. You look at your growth day to day and it seems so small and you can't really see it. But I look back 4 years from now and I go, wow, Lord, look what you did. And so, yeah, to anybody, struggling or going through this, or just, I just believe just God's confirming things to you right now and speaking to you and just giving you peace and hope. And again, we believe anything's possible. So if you're believing for your marriage to be restored, we believe that for you. We attach faith with you to that.
We could just spend hours talking about marriage, but we're not going to do it. But we do have an opportunity coming up that I want you to talk about. That's connected, that we're doing together, igniting marriages.
Yes, we're so excited. We're having a marriage conference on July 10th and 11th. It's in Redding, California, but also you can join us online. And so, Steve, you and Wendy are joining us online, but myself and Peter will be there live in Redding, as well as Connie and Aaron Jones. And pastors Daryl and Gina Fairley will be there as well. And so it's going to be a really powerful event. We're excited for I have anticipation every year we do these events, because different couples come with different, so, like you said, Steve, some couples are doing really, really well in their marriage. They just want to upgrade. Other couples are struggling. Everyone's at a different place in their marriage. But when we come together and, we worship, we hear teachings, and we just have a time to minister to each other, it's just such a powerful experience. And so, really it's for anyone, wherever you're at in marriage.
Because I would assume that people who are listening to this podcast, if they're going to be a part, it would be online, most likely. What would their online experience be like for this? Do both husbands and wife need to do it together? Can one, if the other isn't interested or available?
Yes. Well, your ticket gets you a couple's ticket. So whether you're watching it alone, we've had husbands and wives attend together. We've had them attend, just a wife attending, or the husband couldn't make it. All the sessions are going to be recorded as well. And so if you want to get your ticket and watch the replay later or join when you can, that's also an option, which is great because you'll have access to those for the whole year. But you'll get all the teachings that people in person would get. And Peter and I are also going to have some backstage time, as well as Connie and Aaron with the participants. And so it's going to be a lot of fun. And we look forward to just seeing what the Lord wants to do and just really enjoying it. Did you want to say anything about
Yeah,
that?
I just think it's, it's fun when it's online to some degree because you can go at your own pace. And it's
Hmm.
different because maybe the in-person thing has the added element of community. But the benefit of the online part is, like I love doing it like when I get to work really early in the morning and no one's in the office and I'm all by myself. And I get to listen to all these things and play, it's a great time to do those kind of things. So being online affords that, and you can, whether you do it together or you do it separately, it's not any less powerful.
Absolutely. And obviously, if you can't afford it, please email us at
Yeah.
Igniting Hope. You can email info at Igniting Hope. We don't want anybody to miss out on the experience.
And I can just testify that your ministry has influenced so many lives and so many marriages, and we just love what you guys carry, and we're planning in November. Now this is where we're giving everybody a big lengthy time.
To
But
plan.
Wendy and I, as most of you know, moved up to Caldwell, Idaho, and we are partnering with the church, your Valley Church in Caldwell, Idaho, to have a live 2-day Igniting Marriages here. And Peter and Melinda are going to be coming up to Idaho. And so we just want to plant the seed that we don't have the exact dates in November, but we'll just stay tuned. But just for planting the seed that might be just for a husband and wife, hey, a getaway. It's not too cold in November just yet. Uh, but
Oh, and just a little plug for the women. There's good shopping in Idaho. So if that
oh,
matters to you,
oh, yeah. And for the husbands, there's
they
good
might not, that might
outdoor
not help.
activities and that. So
Uh,
thank you so much, Peter. Why don't you just uh, yeah, just pray into this, into the marriages, but also just pray into this whole concept of believing the best about the people in our life and the spouse. 'Cause I really believe the Lord's going to take us all to a higher level in that.
mm,
Yeah. Yeah. Lord, I just thank you. I thank you for this call. I thank you for just this time. I thank you for your hand on just all of us. I thank you for what you've done over Melinda and I in our
Yes.
marriage. And Lord, I just thank you. I thank you that you love us so much that you empower our beliefs, Lord, and that that we are just filled with your spirit and that everyone listening to this call is filled with your spirit.
Yes.
And I bless everyone's beliefs. I bless the power of those beliefs. I bless the authority of those beliefs. I bless that just their beliefs, just even right now, the prayers that are being uttered from people right now are not only just impacting their own marriages, but maybe their children's marriages and just a legacy of marriages in their family line, God. I just thank you. I just thank you for your goodness and your kindness just to empower our beliefs and the authority that it carries. In Jesus' name.
Amen.
Yes, and we're gonna, as we think about what I started with about working out our beliefs, and this is really what you've shared has been just right in line with that because I remember just even pastoring the church and I began to change my beliefs about the people I led, my prayer time. I'd be declaring, or as you said, Peter, driving, and I lead great people. My people are committed. My people love Jesus. My people's homes are getting stronger. We have unity in our church and then saying I have wisdom in leading. I'm the type of leader that they thrive under, and just once we decide we can just partner with Holy Spirit. What do you want me to believe about myself? What do you want me to believe about my spouse or the people I'm influencing? And then we add that piece, and I talk about it in the culture of empowerment, about empowering beliefs and empowering language, which goes right on with you. And our book, Declare It, has some great beliefs in marriage and relationship. So Wow, I am just fired up. Thank you so much, Peter, Melinda, for being with us today. And
Thank
by
you
the way,
for
let me
being
just ask you this. You have your own ministry as well. Talk to us about what you guys, uh, yeah, and
Yes.
some of the books you've written. Yes.
So our ministry is Arise and Shine International, and I have my own ministry as well, melindalagaay.com. But we have both written books. I've written 3 books, and my most recent book was on all 3 of them include a little bit of elements of our restoration testimony. But the most recent book, Restoring the Generations, is definitely geared towards those who have overcome or overcoming infidelity and are choosing to
Mm.
stay in their marriage and want to rebuild their marriage. And then I have a book on deliverance and pursuing your dreams as well. And do you want to talk about your book?
Yeah, and I wrote a book. It's called Silently Broken, Loudly Restored, and it's my testimony. It's basically what happened. So if you want a more in-depth read
It's really good.
about what
It's really
happened
good.
from the very beginning until well, I wrote it 4 years ago, so up until about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
I love it. And just spell your last name, just so people who maybe listen to the podcast, they don't see it. How do you
Yes, it's
spell it?
not phonetic. Okay, it's Lagaay, and Peter is Dutch. He's ready for the game, the the World Cup game that's happening, and so it's a Dutch spelling.
All right. Lagaay.
Got it.
Hi. Oh my. Well, all right. We're gonna wrap up a little earlier than I usually do some things at the end, but I think we've had enough on this. We're doing the Backlund Leadership Academy. It's starting again in September. I just want to mention that, and you can go to ignitinghope.com, and we've got a lot of free resources there, declarations. We have our itinerary as well, and then Igniting Hope Academy .com, where you can find about the Igniting Marriages plus all of our other courses. So, all right. Thanks again, Peter and Melinda. God bless everybody.